several million of us voters are expected to head out and vote today in what's being called the most important election, midterm election in our lifetime.
Here to give us an overview before you cast your ballot is legal attorney Vikas Bajaj. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So we were kind of talking about overall themes of this election, and there's a lot at stake, which I think is why we are seeing such a high voter turnout.
Yes.
Which in midterm you usually only see kind of the opposition minority party come out, but we're seeing both sides of the aisle really get into this.
Absolutely, and I think it's really part and parcel and a very practical consequence of the type of election this is. In many ways, this is a warm-up to 2020 to see who's going to be in place at the time those decisions need to be made. But most importantly, this is really a policy over person election. It is really where you stand and what's important to you. If the economy is important to you, well, then you may say tax cuts are important, increasing wages for the middle class is important. If it's not important, that is finances, maybe you look at the border. Do you look at immigration? Do you look at civil liberties in general? Women's rights to choose? These election strong points that we've heard the pundits repeat over and over and over are so much a part of this midterm election, when really the midterm election has very little effect on those issues. We have propositions that affect our ability to buy a cup of coffee in the morning that really have way more of a practical effect on how we live our daily lives. But you see this real exodus from our homes, and people that used to be couch potatoes betting against themselves during election night or election day moving out to the polls. I think the numbers are staggering. Some of the poll numbers say that over a third more. We're seeing 30% plus more individuals come on out to the polls and cast their vote. I think it's a consequence of the state of the union that we're in now, which is a policy-driven vote. I know very little about my own candidates for city council, but I know who delivers way too much mail to my house and clutters up my mailbox, and I know who may have been accused of fraud, but I just don't know where they stand on the issues. And that's why I believe this is such a policy, a global policy. Where do you stand? Do you stand on the more conservative, strong economy, less governmental interference in the way we do business as citizens? Or do you believe in a bigger government, more taxes, and less of an ability for us citizens to declare what we want to pay and how? For instance, the gas tax. Here in California, speaking locally, it affects all of us, not only as a person who follows this arena, but a person that goes to our local Costco to put gas in my wife's sport utility vehicle. Well, that's important to me when I have to pay an extra 12 cents per gallon in addition to the other taxes California has to pay for gas and oil refinery processes.
Let me stop you there, because that Proposition 6 we're talking about.
That's correct.
And there's a problem, according to Carl DeMaio, who's been spearheading the yes on 6, repeal the gasoline tax. He says that politicians played dirty tricks on them in Sacramento and changed the repeal the gas tax initiative to something that looked like it was something different, that we were going to take money away from construction projects and things. So this is talk about legal, the legal system kind of working in favor of one side or the other. This is the perfect right of a person in Sacramento to change the repeal the gas tax thing, and that's going to be probably up for litigation if he fails to pass.
Oh, absolutely. And as I say, this is something that we can all relate to. So who made the decision, Carlos? That's the question I'd like to ask people I have coffee with. Who made the decision to say when I run my credit card there I have to pay an extra 12 cents a gallon? You know, we have a right, I believe, when we're taxed, to have a say in it, to say where the money goes. Now, the misrepresentations or correct representations, who really knows? The reality is most of us are educated by what we hear on the radio, what we see in the paid advertisements. We know very little about the text of the law. And that's why I encourage everyone who's going to rush out to the polls, and if you haven't already done it, do it. Read the literature. Read the language. It's very difficult to know where you stand on a certain proposition by reading the headline. They are intentionally misleading. And that's a gray area that I believe deserves a tremendous amount of scrutiny in the future. And it's, as I say, it's really a policy over person type of an election this year.
Well, it's really important how you word things, and that's why we stress doing the homework. We try to do it for you.
That's right.
In the time we have left, I definitely want to talk about an issue that I know you want to focus on, which is the president talking about changing birthright citizenship with an executive order. Paul Ryan had spoken out on Twitter against it, so some of that in-party fighting we're seeing, and the president saying he needs to focus on the House keeping a majority. But you think it could go to the Supreme Court, and that's that's another big issue.
Absolutely, and we've seen that in this presidency. President Trump has campaigned upon certain platforms, and for the most part, he's delivered upon those platforms, whether he has had to do it by executive order and then have that executive order challenged in the courts. But the real benefit to that is you have immediate effect and then a legal challenge. We see that with this administration. The policies that were sold to the people are things the president really wants to deliver, and I believe that will be a long-standing argument and a disagreement. We can see the Supreme Court nominee and now Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh is now on the Supreme Court. He is a conservative, and many regard him as an originalist, a person who looks at the language, the text of the Constitution as and when it was written. So you can see now the effect of appointments and confirmations to the Supreme Court, which now will have the ultimate responsibility of interpreting those words from centuries ago to see how they apply to an individual's rights on a citizen basis in the United States of America today.
Now, it'll be really interesting to watch all of this, because you're right. It's all in the fine print. Read the ballot. Read the fine print, because you're going to learn an awful lot. Vic Bajaj, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.